So, the World Cup 2022 in Qatar has officially come to an end. So we thought before the domestic leagues get started again, we'll have a quick review of some of our favourite moments and key pointers from the World Cup. So, first question, how well did the media deal with all of the controversy surrounding the World Cup before we'd even kicked the ball?
Oof, tough question to kick us off. I'm tempted to say, might be controversial, but I'm tempted to say they did it quite well.
Yeah.
Not in a sense of they delved really deep into the issues and they provided a massive analysis of them, but I think in a sense of they covered them and did it just about enough to make us aware without detracting too much from the crowd of people that said just stick to the football.
Yeah. See, that was my biggest thing when watching it was, surfing Twitter as you do. And that jumped up journalist Piers Morgan goes off on one at the BBC footage and saying that how dare they not show the opening ceremony. And I was like, I'm watching the opening ceremony right now. And it was because they had two different streams. One was showing the opening ceremony, and then the stuff with Gary Lineker was going more deep into the controversies and everything. And I was like, you know what, that's the perfect way to do it. Because you're still being respectful in a way. You're still showing the world the opening ceremony and the start of this big tournament. But then what the Westerners want to hear, that the content that we want to consume, is still being talked about. We're still getting that information from them, which I thought was pretty well done.
I think from a broadcaster point of view, there's a lot to consider in terms of getting the balance right.
Yeah.
Because you're catering for a nation, quite a reactionary nation of people that are either one side of the fence, or that it's either football tournament must focus on that,
yeah,
or it's a kind of human rights at the forefront, we've got to focus on that. They were never going to please everyone. And I think the main thing is maybe time will tell just how much their coverage has impacted once we see any changes in Qatar, in those countries over time with regards to workers' rights and LGBTQ plus rights in those countries over time.
Yeah, because we always talk about the West's exposure to countries like that, and oh no, what are we going to adopt from countries that we don't necessarily want to adopt anything from? Apologies. But there's also the element of, what are they going to adopt from us? Like, just because we're opening our eyes to them doesn't mean that they're not opening up their eyes to us. And there is that two-way street sometimes. So it will be interesting, like you say, in the future to see what happens with that, and if anything happens with it.
Absolutely. I think time is going to be the biggest teller really of the story of how much the coverage has impacted upon those people and has changed their lives and will move countries like Qatar and UAE forward in the future to provide a better platform for those people to live in.
Yeah, fantastic. Right, so I guess we're thinking they did a pretty good job. I mean, so if you're interested in any of this at all, Joe actually has an amazing blog out on our website, www.allsportreports.com. I need to get used to saying that a little bit faster. So if you want to head over there and you can read Joe's blog about sports washing in general.
I think what's worth pointing out as well is that a lot of the coverage we've seen from Qatar has come from journalists that have been paid to be there, and because they're paid to be there, they get to see the fully varnished final product of what is a beautifully well put together environment for those people. I think you have to really dig into the lives of those that work there, particularly migrant workers, not the ones building stadiums, not even just those, but the hospitality people like that work there. They know the true Qatar. So I think it's really important that to get a good understanding of what life is actually like in Qatar, don't just take what you've seen from journalists and what you see from the television personalities as read, because the true Qatar isn't the experience that they're getting.
Yeah, and especially from the broadcaster's point of view, when we were looking at the games, it very much was at the start of the World Cup, right, we're going to talk about these controversies, but from my perspective it felt like, yeah, we've talked about them now it's a football tournament. We didn't really get, obviously the news was still covering it, and sports news was still covering it, but when it actually came down to the game, they weren't talking about it, which I think was a really clever play, because it stopped the people who didn't want it being talked about to, get on the backs of the broadcasters, but it also allowed for the people that did want to learn a little bit more to still have those outlets to find out the information and really delve deep into what was going on.
I think certainly, yeah. I mean, obviously the football pundits that are put in studios for BBC and ITV, they aren't going to be experts on those topics. I saw Joe Cole got a bit of stick on Twitter for his analysis, let's say, because he was covering the opening game for ITV.
Yeah.
And he kind of didn't really go into much detail because it's quite clear that he wasn't fully clued up. But you can't expect these ex-pros to be experts on everything. It's hard enough to get them to talk about football half the time.
Yeah.
So to get them to talk about human rights and things like that, it's a big ask.
Yeah.
There's enough quality journalism out there for those of you who really want to find out about these issues. Sometimes you've got to let the likes of, your Roy Keane, who did, by the way, speak quite well.
Yeah.
The likes of Roy Keane and, again, Neville, who likes to talk about these issues. The likes of Joe Cole. Yeah,
a lot.
Comes a point where let them talk about football, because that's what they are there to be doing.
Yeah.
And if you do want an expert on other issues, we don't live in the Middle Ages. The internet is there.
Yeah, you got to bring them.
Because you're on the internet. It's there. You can find it.
You got to bring them in, because when you think about it, half these ex-pros didn't finish school. Most of them took 2, maybe 1 day out a week of high school, and then they didn't do anything else. So I know that's probably a little bit too much about, you didn't finish school, so you mustn't be clever. I'm not saying that, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be clued into world politics.
It's such a nuanced topic as well. You've got to have so many facets to it. You just got to make sure that if you're talking about something like that on a national platform in front of millions of people on TV, there's no point going into it half-heartedly. Be passionate about it or don't do it.
You've got to know what you're talking about, because especially when you're broadcasted to millions, you're going to get picked apart. I mean, I have a history and politics degree, and I don't necessarily want to speak that much about the issues because I don't know about them enough. So I do think it's a little bit unfair to expect this from people who, yes, are in the public eye, but maybe don't follow it, and it's okay for them not to follow it. They're footballers, ex-pros, they don't need to be clued into that. What you want from them is actually to be keyed into the Premier League games at the weekend. That's their job, so that's what they should be focusing on, and it is a bit much to ask of them to be clued into world politics at the same time.
Yeah, and there will be a counterpoint. People will say, well, you're paid to be there to cover the World Cup, you're there to cover the football, but because you're in Qatar, there's other things to cover as well. But I just think that taking on that burden of having to somehow suddenly overnight be a politics expert and human rights expert is a lot to ask of people that, as I mentioned a moment ago, fails to get the football things right, the bread and butter things right most of the time. So just having people to stay doing what they are there to be doing sometimes is probably the right way to go about it.
Yeah. So we've got a few questions here. So our next question is, what was your highlight of the World Cup 2022? Honestly,
I just think that there were so many different things that you could put in the sort of highlights bracket, that in a tournament that was a whirlwind, because it was the shortest World Cup since the 32-team format, the shortest World Cup in terms of time frame, games crammed in that opening period, 4 games a day. Great things were happening every day. Now, there were some dull games, obviously, in the early group stages. There were some pretty dull games, and there was talk about, is the format working? Is it the winter that's the issue? But it soon came into life. Now,
as it does with every World
Cup. It doesn't take long, really. You need 1 or 2 sparks, and then it really kicks in. But I did think that the earliest highlight was the Saudi Arabia win against the eventual champions.
I mean, I've got that as an answer to some of our later questions, which we might come back to, but that was when I knew, this World Cup's going to be different.
Yeah.
This World Cup's going to be a bit something else.
It does seem a long time ago now.
Yeah, it does. I mean, we're filming this on the Thursday after the World Cup final, and we've already had some domestic domestic games. So it does feel like that Saudi Arabia-Argentina game, what was it, the second day?
It was the second or the third day, I think. It was the first day there was 10 a.m. games.
Yeah.
It was the first 10 o'clock game.
And that does feel like a long time ago, but calendar-wise, it's about a month ago.
Yeah, it's a very whirlwind. It's Christmas time as well.
It's Christmas time.
Time was flying this time of year. Got no chance to keep up the days at all. So that was definitely a highlight. I think Australia getting through to the last 16.
Yeah, no, that was
a huge moment for soccer in their country.
Yeah, the Socceroos.
The Socceroos.
Which is just very Australian, isn't it? Like, not only do you have to decide to call it soccer as well, but just to add the Socceroos at the end, like, yeah, we're Australia. We're not taking anything else. We're Australia.
I mean, there's some great nicknames for teams. So Socceroos is up there with the worst.
Oh
surely.
yeah, absolutely.
Not a fan of
absolutely.
At all.
But that even, I mean, I know they lost the game, what was it, 4-1 against France, but their first goal, it was like, that was a highlight for me, because I was like, was it the same day that a few other upsets had happened?
Was it the same day of the Argentina-Saudi Arabia game?
Something like that, or it might have been this Germany game, they lost their first game, something, and I was like, no way is this going to happen. Is Australia going to beat France? This is incredible. And that was like, that first day of like, this World Cup is bonkers. Like, what is going on?
I thought the winner's curse was back again in France.
Right, so, do you have any more highlights whatsoever?
It would be ridiculous to move on from this conversation without discussing the final. Because, Luke, what on earth was that game of football? I might have lost my mind. I mean, I've lost my mind on a number of occasions, you know, just through medical purposes, but that was insane. I was watching it and I was like, oh, it's 2-0, you know, Messi's got this in the bag, they're not going to lose this. Argentina have been on a ridiculous run of clean sheets, you know, before this World Cup. They've got a solid defence, they've got better defenders to bring off the bench. I can't believe Martinez didn't get that much time, like... I don't rate Otamendi at all. He was getting minutes, left, right and centre.
But, you know, they've got a good defence. I didn't see France coming back. And granted, the first penalty, I'm still a little bit unsure. Not for France, for Argentina. The slight tap on Di Maria. Yeah. I was a little bit unsure, so it maybe even 1-0, but France really showed their mettle.
Yeah.
In coming back at that, and people might say, oh, so if they had a penalty got it back at 2 penalties got it back at. I mean, if you get into the box and you get fouled, that's the game.
Yeah.
Like, you know the game. If you get fouled, you get a penalty, and it's your best way to score.
Yeah. You could say France learned a bit from England. You know, 2 penalties. Get themselves in positions. You know, against England's our second penalty. You know. Mount was never going to do anything significant with that ball at the top, but he won a foul because of the defender's stupidity, really, more than anything else, more than Mount's creativity. But get yourselves in those positions, you can draw fouls and you can get chances from the spot. And credit to Mbappe, because he's put that ball down on the spot. He's buried it twice in the game, and then also took one of the shootout as well and buried that. It takes some bottle to take 3 penalties and score 3.
It's kind of really hurtful to me because I did not rate Mbappe before this tournament. It's tough to admit, if I'm honest, because I kept seeing these things. Haaland's the next, not Haaland, Mbappe's the next greatest thing ever, and I'm like, again, he plays in the French league, like. You can't say that they're the best player in the world or anything like that if you're playing against farmers. Like, you can't do it. And then Haaland came over to the Premier League and was absolutely ripping it up, and I'm sure he's going to rip it up again tonight and for the future. Like, and then I'm like, well, Mbappe's got similar numbers, so surely Haaland's the better player. Like, I just couldn't see it. But then the occasion, the ability, the coolness and the technicality of what he was doing across the World Cup, I have to hold my hands up and say, not to say that he's the best in the world. I won't concede that yet. I don't like those conversations anyway. Really, I think it's from game to game. It depends, but he's a bloody good player.
First of all, if you're French, apologies.
No, I'm sorry. I'm
Words
not.
of Luke, not
I'm not going to
myself.
apologise. I love France, but your football league is awful. It's not a good football league, guys. Get onto the Premier League. Watch some of the Premier League stuff. You'll recognise what real football is.
What I would say about Mbappe though is he 20? We're 24 now.
Well, he's 24 now. Yeah.
Today. Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Nice way to celebrate your birthday.
It's also my birthday. Maybe that's why I don't like him that much.
Possibly. Yeah, you
Stealing my thunder.
Can't share birthdays, can you?
Yeah.
But what I would say is he's really stepped up at the age of 23 in a World Cup to produce that sort of tournament.
Yeah.
I don't like this word. It's very American. The word clutch, but big moments in the World Cup, he stepped up. We think about the Poland last 16 game, a couple of good goals in that one. The final, producing a hat-trick in the World Cup final in itself is a stupid achievement.
Yeah.
At 23 is an even more ridiculous achievement.
Yeah.
To lose the game is quite frankly shambolic.
Oh, I know.
To score a World Cup, this is stuff of dreams, playground dreams, that a World Cup final hat-trick.
It's just
to
insane.
lose the game is just silly.
Yeah. And I mean, some of the abuse that he's got. So I posted a video yesterday on our channel of why I don't understand why he's getting so much abuse from the Argentinians, especially Emi Martinez. I mean, he put 4 goals last year. Like, calm down a bit. And I don't think he deserves the abuse. And it is a bit bad for him not to have won that game, because in all fairness, he did everything possible to make sure that France was still in that.
France team that didn't really turn up in the grand scheme of things.
Like, that first half was really horrid to watch, actually.
I don't know whether they're all still ill or what, but I mean, Dembele put in the worst 40 minutes of football I've ever seen in my life.
We talk about players like bringing their stock up. I think he took millions off his price tag if he's going to move from Barcelona, because I don't think he played that well during the whole tournament. I think he played alright, but I think people were getting carried away with France's performances and saying that Dembele was playing amazing. He wasn't. He played alright. But for a winger, you want to get assists and goals. And I'm not entirely sure he got any.
But you do have to check his stats.
I'd have to check his stats, but I don't remember anybody saying, oh yeah, Dembele scored this. Dembele, amazing assist. I can't remember it.
I mean, Giroud looked off the pace of the final. I think he's one that was being talked about that had that illness in the week leading up to it. He looked off the pace. I thought that bringing Kolo Muani on was good from Deschamps. I thought that was a good move.
Unexpected.
Yeah, even if Giroud was fit and healthy and not ill and put in that first half performance, I wouldn't have been against Deschamps bringing him off anyway, because I thought that kind of he was anonymous in that game. I mean, I thought Mbappe was fairly anonymous until the big moments where he stepped it up, and that's where those sort of players.
Those type of players to do that stuff. Like, you don't necessarily, especially strikers. Maybe Harry Kane's a little bit different because he drops back a lot. But those strikers are there for those moments. They're not necessarily there. Like, there's a big thing about strikers need to come back and help the defence. Not necessarily. Not all the time. It depends what system you play in.
I mean, but Messi as well for Argentina. He goes through quiet spells. Maybe that's PSG's downfall. They've got Mbappe and Messi who go through spells where they can just walk around the pitch.
Yeah.
Does that help when you're defending in a Champions League game when you've only got really 9 players because 2 of them wandered about on the halfway line?
And Neymar's not
exactly
not really a defensive player. No, he's a workhorse when it comes to rolling around on the floor. He enjoys that quite a lot. Again, not a big fan of Neymar either. But yeah, it's it was an incredible. Who do I like? I mean, I'm a Manchester United fan, so Rashford. But I'm not nowhere near saying that Rashford's like that level, because I recognise that they're more talented than Rashford is. It's just I don't. A lot of the time, it's about attitude to me, and I understand. These big players, they have like these attitudes, and that's what makes them great and everything. But sometimes I'm just like, get up, get up, and get on with it. And I can recognise sometimes that it does hurt, but most of the time they're just, if you're rolling around 15 times before you stop, you're not hurt.
I think in this World Cup, we got to see a lot more of that being clamped down because of the added time situation. We were seeing 8, 9, 10 minutes added on at the end of halves because of the time wasting and because the referees are actually playing the adequate amount of time. So I think that mitigated that a little bit during the World Cup.
Yeah, watching the United game last night, there was 1 minute added on at half time, and I was like, what is
Where's the zero at the end of it?
What's happening? Like, there must be about 8 minutes there. The ball's been out of play like 10 times.
Like Burnley as well.
What's going on?
That must be at least 5 minutes.
I know, but we'll get to Man United and Burnley and Manchester City and all that. We'll get to them, much later on, a few days from now. But that World Cup final was definitely. I reckon it's one of the best World Cup finals ever.
It's probably I mean, people talk about 54. I think they often cite. I can't remember that one, Luke. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, no, not really.
I mean, it's the best World Cup final of my lifetime.
Yeah.
Best final of any football tournament in my lifetime as well. I'm not wrapped my brains too much to think about anymore. The Liverpool fans are going to come at me and say 2005 Istanbul.
Oh God, Liverpool fan. Right, I'm sorry. I'm coming across as a really hateful person.
If you're a French and Liverpool fan, don't watch this. You turn it off.
Actually, no. Watch it for the views, right? But then turn it off. Yeah. No, I'm not a fan of that. But I suppose that's what we want to create on this channel, is the debate. So if you think there's another final that tops that World Cup final that you think is the greatest final of all time, put it down in the comments and we'll see what we get. Right, so another big thing that came out from this tournament was some relatively unknown players really coming into their own. So we've got a question here of which players A, stood out, but B, got themselves a big money move to a bigger team.
Perhaps not big money, but I do think that Harry Souttar for Australia was somebody who was talked about throughout the whole tournament.
Yeah.
As somebody who could do a job in the Premier League. Now, I don't know who exactly would sign him. I can't think of a club that would particularly stand out for him. Maybe a Southampton, someone like that.
Yeah.
Or he plays in the red and white kit at Stoke. So he's maybe somebody who I think could get a move off the back of this tournament.
Yeah, he's a big boy, isn't he?
Big boy. That was kind of the whole kind of narrative around him. He's a big lump, but big lumps work sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I might even put Brighton. Brighton do like a fairly big centre back. Yeah. So that might be a shout for him. I liked. I've got two Moroccans actually.
Go for it.
That obviously the massive dark horse of the tournament, but Bono. The keeper. Yeah. He was the best keeper by miles. Like, I know Martinez got the Golden Glove and everything, but he played out of his skin, and I think he'll get, maybe not the Premier League, but he might get a good move to a bigger team in La Liga.
Yeah.
Because I think, showing out on the biggest stages needs to be rewarded sometimes.
Yeah. Very much kind of in the Keylor Navas 2014 mould of playing well for Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And to put Real Madrid after that tournament, so he could fit that mould quite well.
No, definitely. And then the defensive midfielder, Amrabat.
Yes.
Genuinely, I don't think, other than like the big boys from the big teams, I've seen a defensive midfielder play as competently as I saw him play during the World Cup, and I had no idea who he was beforehand. And I know he plays for Fiorentina, is it? He plays in the Italian league, and so that's a pretty decent team.
Yeah, it's good
it's a good league, but I just saw him. I'm like, you could do bits for a good Premier League team, like. Good on the ball, not shy of a tackle, like most Italian teams value that, so I get that. And his passing range was great. So I thought he had an incredible tournament. Yeah.
One final one from me, I think, is McAllister. Argentina and Brighton's McAllister. Who I genuinely, when I first saw him play, thought he was Scottish because, why wouldn't he be?
Yeah, why?
With that surname.
And that look about it. He doesn't look Argentinian either.
It's got the Barry Bannon kind of vibe about him when I watch him, I look at him. But when he plays, phenomenal.
He is.
Obviously he's been playing in the Premier League for some time with Brighton, but he's never caught my eye in the same way that he has on this World Cup.
No.
He's the kind of player, I could see a number of Premier League teams thinking he could fit their
well, there's already rumours about Arsenal. Arsenal's already come out and said they want him.
instinct was saying Chelsea because
Yeah.
of the Graham Potter and the Brighton links
True,
to
true.
Chelsea and Brighton, and he's the kind of attacking midfielder kind of role that Chelsea seem to have a lot of players like that, and they always know what to do with them. So I think he'll be a bit of a, not a panic buy from Chelsea, but kind of a very much a Chelsea signing.
Would it do him any good though? Like, because Chelsea do this to players. They buy them in. Man United does it as well. They buy them all in. They're like, oh yeah, big name signing or a potential, somebody with potential that the fans get all excited about. They're like, oh yes, we're going to get this guy. And then it does absolutely not. Werner was... Alexis Sanchez for United, like, is McAllister going to end up being that because there's such a huge, like, tradition of the clubs taking those players and doing absolutely nothing.
He could be a Hakim Ziyech 2.0 at Chelsea, who had a great tournament.
And Ziyech played brilliantly for Morocco.
So for his sake of his career development, I would say Chelsea would be a bad move, but everything in the football world and how football operates points to a bit of a silly move to Chelsea.
Yeah.
Not silly to Arsenal. I think Arsenal would be a better fit for him, but it does point more towards it was a silly Chelsea move to me.
Personally, I think there might be a good move. This pains me to say, but Liverpool, it might be a good move for him and for Liverpool to do it. I don't think it will happen, but I think it would be a good move for both parties in that terms.
I could see it. I could see it working a lot more than I could see it working at the likes of, say, Chelsea or Manchester United. Just depends how willing Liverpool are to spend.
Yeah.
Because World Cup inflated transfer values, plus Liverpool's owners trying to sell as it is and also being fairly tight, might mean that he might be a little bit out of their budget.
Yeah, I mean, talking about inflated World Cup transfer values, Cody Gakpo is going to have such a huge price on his head now, because I think most of the world are pretty understanding that United's probably going to end up with Gakpo. I always get the P and the K mixed up. I don't know how to say it, but most people think, yeah, that's probably going to happen. Erik Ten Hag wanted him before the World Cup anyway. Like, they need a striker. That might happen. But you've got inflated World Cup and Man United tax.
Yeah.
On top of that, he might go for a lot of money.
Cody Gakpo at this World Cup is a reminder again of how much can happen in such a short space of time. Netherlands were knocked out in the quarterfinals and he did his best work in the group stages. Yeah. And that feels like such a long time ago again. And I've almost forgotten all about him.
Yeah. Do you remember when Rashford was in the Golden Boot race?
Well,
he scored in 2 games.
That was incredible when he was in the race for the Golden Boot. Same with Saka as well. It's crazy. Gakpo to United, again, seems like a very obvious transfer, but a very obvious transfer that's destined to probably fail. Maybe a little bit of a Memphis Depay vibe about him. Might be the Dutch thing. Dutch to Man United after a good World Cup is a little
Clip it. When Gakpo becomes a United legend, guys, we'll get
cancelled already, aren't I? Maybe that's what it'll be. Pin me up on your dressing room wall, Gakpo. Yeah. Pin me up, because honestly, I want it to work out. I think he's a good player. Don't really like United, but I do think he's got potential. I just don't think that environment is quite right for him yet.
Yeah, I mean, United ruins players like that, to be fair. But I think there is a difference with Erik Ten Hag coming in. He is a developmental player. He clearly cares a lot about his young players, like, developing well. So we'll see, but only time can tell and stuff like that.
I've got to sign him first.
Well, yeah, exactly. Right, sorry. Yeah, in 2 months' time we'll be talking about
United's Cody Gakpo.
Yeah. We'll be talking about Arsenal's Cody Gakpo or something like that.
Man United's McAllister.
Yeah. What a crazy signing that'd be. Funniest parts of the World Cup. So I'm going to start because mine was Saudi Arabia beating Argentina.
Yeah.
I could not stop laughing. I thought that was the most brilliant thing, and I guess it's kind of full circle with Argentina eventually winning the World Cup.
It's kind of all that ends well, isn't it, in a sense?
Yeah, but they came in with such hype. This is a team that's going to win it. This is a team that's, off the scales. They've been so good defensively. Won the Copa America. They've got the GOAT or whatever. I hate that debate. And yeah, they were so primed to win it. Shout out Logan Paul and KS. Like, no, let's not.
No.
Sorry, that just
anyway.
popped in my head. No shade. But yeah, they were primed to win it, and then they just like fall to the second least footballing team in the tournament. It was just so funny.
It was a bizarre game. I mean, the first half, Lautaro Martinez spent most of it offside.
Yeah.
There were some fractional ones that showed up that new semi-world space technology for the first time.
Yeah.
And there was one that was just absolutely ridiculous where he couldn't time his run at all whatsoever. I mean, they could have gone into half time 3-0 up, at least. But then in second half, in the whirlwind 5 minutes, got completely torn apart by Saudi Arabia.
It was so
It was
funny.
a very, really bizarre one, yeah.
Honestly, I was at work. I hope none of my managers were watching this, but I was at work and we were watching it, and I couldn't concentrate. I was like, oh my god, what is happening? Like, this is insane. And also at the same time, laughing my arse off.
I was watching the game at home, and when they scored the first one, the equaliser, my reaction was, oh, wow, they've scored.
Yeah, well done.
Then, but then when the winning goal was absolutely spectacular. One of the goals of the tournament, in my opinion. I just got out of my seat and put my hands behind my head and just said, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
I just couldn't believe it.
And then holding on as well.
Yeah.
That's the best thing. It's when you've got an attacking force like Argentina coming at you, is being able to hold on to something like that. I mean, the half before this, they conceded a number of offside goals.
Yeah.
And it was very brave of them because they clearly decided to step up.
Yeah.
And, holding on to that is a big deal. Big deal. Well done.
Yeah.
Well done, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
I mean, and the most, hilarious part of it is that Lionel Messi is an ambassador for Saudi Arabia, and he got absolutely pummeled by them.
So the funniest thing, or the fishiest thing, you have to ask yourself, maybe, whether they're not, I'm not suggesting anything, obviously.
Football investigators,
there's nothing wrong with football. Football's all clean and all like
it's
that.
completely clean.
But Saudi Arabia set out a blueprint to beat Argentina in that first game.
Yeah.
And seemingly nobody else followed it.
Yeah.
Because that high line really worked. It was risky. I mean, they were lucky that Lautaro just couldn't time a run to save his life. But the high line worked for Saudi Arabia.
Lautaro Martinez plays in Italy where they don't play a high line. They play drop back defensive football.
Behind,
So he's probably just not used to it.
Yeah.
That's not his game. So he was getting caught out constantly. And I mean, he had so many chances throughout the entire World Cup and he didn't score a single goal.
Maybe if they had Julian Alvarez playing in that game, it might have been different in that first half in particular. But I think Saudi Arabia set out a way for the rest of the world to copy if they wanted to give them a good game. And no one seemed to take any heed from it. So.
Nope. None. Have you got any other funny moments?
I have, and I feel really bad saying this, but Lukaku's cameo against Croatia.
That was spectacular.
I mean, I earlier on said that Dembele's 45 minutes against Argentina in the final was the worst half football I've seen. But I'll take it all back. Some of those chances were a lot harder than what people are making out, Lukaku. But the problem is when you're missing that many in such a short space of time, when you are carrying the reputation of a country that had a very poor World Cup up to that point, people are always laughing at your country. You've got to come on and make an impact. Yeah,
your country's golden generation as well. Like, you've already embarrassed yourselves. Don't fall over as well. You've already dressed up in a clown suit. Don't put the pie in your face as well. It was hilarious. I couldn't finish watching it. I was like, oh, this is rubbish.
It's a terrible game of football, awful game of football. But Lukaku, I mean, I feel bad saying it because he left the pitch at the end. He was visibly upset about it. Because he felt that he'd let his country down, which he had. He did have the opportunity to not let his country down. It wasn't like we watch a lot of non-league football, and there are strikers in non-league that could have scored those goals. I mean, I'm not saying that I could have scored. It's rude because scored those goals.
Maybe not. I'm not saying because I'm a lot like Lukaku, maybe in terms of this. I think I can do something, and then up until it actually happens, I'm like, oof.
I think what Belgium though have taught us, not just this tournament, but in previous tournaments, is that just because somebody was good at Everton doesn't mean it's going to translate to international football.
Yeah.
Martinez leading the team and then Lukaku leading the line hasn't really worked out for them. Not just this year, but in the past as well.
I mean, Martinez was one of the only managers that had survived from the last World Cup, and he didn't do much in the last World Cup either. Like, Belgium should have won that tournament last time. Like, with the players that they got, at the age that they were, in the form that they were, they should have gone on to win it, or at least reach the finals. But they couldn't. They couldn't get over that line. And the fact that he retained his position, didn't do anything in the Euros, and then similarly didn't do anything in the World Cup. I was just like, obviously he's walked away now, but I was very surprised that he even entered this World Cup as head coach or manager or whatever his title was. Yeah. No, it was a very funny game. Well, anyway, so that is our video for today. It's been a good conversation. It's been a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, actually.
I thought it'd be a 10-minute. We'll stop talking the World
quick one, but we might, I don't know, we might have split this into many videos, so you might be seeing this exact exit like 10 times or whatever, because we did a lot of speaking. But it's been good, and I hope you liked it. And if you did like it, make sure you like. Oh, I feel like such a YouTuber now.
This is proper YouTube speak.
This is meta. This is like next level. But if you liked, make sure you drop a like. And if you want to see any more of this, make sure you subscribe as well. But the biggest thing for us is that we want to create debate. We want to create a community of people that love all sports. That's why we're called All Sports. So make sure you comment, start some debate, but please be respectful. Right, anything else to say?
Nothing else to say from me. Thank you so much for watching. As Luke said, like, subscribe, and hopefully see you all again soon.
Are you ever going to get used to that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my catchphrase now.
Is it your catchphrase? Oh, fantastic.
It's alright.
Right, cut.